Thank you for having me today, and Allison for the invitation to take part of some really interesting talks this morning, some tough acts to follow. Maybe I'll give you a little bit of a, tells you how well organized I am. I can't find my notes here.
Oopsie. There, I distracted them from that by breaking my chair, Greg. There we go. Thank you very much.
Yep. I'll just give you a quick kind of background. I spent pretty well my whole career in healthcare. I've had a few companies and startups in every facet, surgical, clinical, retail. I've worked all throughout Canada, a lot of places in the United States, Cuba, Bahamas, and I guess I'm a bit of a student of health and health design and longevity. And I had the opportunity to witness a lot of good in our healthcare system here in Nova Scotia. I've worked with some great nurses, some great doctors, scientists, researchers. Unfortunately, I also have seen a lot of bad, and there's a lot of bad. And quite frankly, I think we're in very deep trouble. When I look around at some of the younger people here today, I think we're going to owe you a real big apology because we've left you a real big mess. And it's a big mess. If you think it's bad, times it by 10. And because of the macro forces that's coming with regards to chronic disease and aging population and some new emerging threats to public health, coupled with the fact that we have a system that absolutely cannot repair itself and is incapable of repairing itself, nor does it want to repair itself. So it's not pretty. And I had a chat with my wife the other night. You know, our daughters, I have two young daughters that are going to be going to university in 3 or 4 years, and we had the discussion that I'm not sure whether we can live in Nova Scotia, because we're actually probably the most exposed to this problem because of our disease rates and because of a system that's actually in deep, deep trouble. And it's kind of shamed me a little bit to even talk like that. I'm not a quitter, but I also understand the situation, and it's very, very dire. However, this is a day about hope, and I look around and I know there's a group of people that actually can save our skin, that can turn this thing around, whether you're young and old, and those are people like you. You don't need to be a doctor, you don't need to be a nurse, you just need to care and you need to act. And from hearing what I'm hearing this morning, particularly from some of the speakers, I think we're there, and I know you can do it. And I'll just take you through a few examples. One thing that concerns me is the inequality in healthcare today, and you're seeing it more and more. If you live beside a doctor, you're in real good shape. You're not going to have to wait. You just actually, there's already a 2-tier system in place. You just jump the queue, and you get ahead. And I was one of those people. I had that opportunity. And so I left the healthcare system almost completely to start another company, and I'll talk about that in a second. So, if I'm hitting these buttons right. So this is, I just want to talk to you about a bit of a slide, and what if in 2017 we built a system around this? Instead of pills and scalpels and MRIs and CAT scans, the most expensive way, and what if we followed this platform? At the top is food, and I'll talk about that in a second. Movement is simple. We just have to design our societies to move a little more. It's not a gym membership, it's just moving. Environment is a compelling one with the amount of chemicals in the environment and toxicity. It leads directly to disease. Anybody read a book called The Blue Zone? You ever heard of a book called The Blue Zone? Raise your hand. Nobody? Yeah, you did? It's a really cool book. And basically a group of people went around the world studying people that lived to be 100 years old and died. And to me, the optimal health system is designed to help you live to be 100 relatively healthy, and then you die, not with the state of chronic disease today. And so what these people did is study these pockets all over the world, and what they discovered in Okinawa and Costa Rica and Loma Linda, California, and a part of Mexico is all the same theme, is that these people basically followed most of those principles. They ate good food, they moved a lot, integrated into their work, there was no gym memberships. They had very strong faith, not religion, but faith. And it showed up also in the second part in family, very tight family relationships. When you got older, you did not go to a senior home. You stayed in your home with the family, which made a profound difference on the quality of life and longevity. The other things that are really emerging is stress. Our mainstream system today has no concept of how to deal with stress and its relative negative effect on disease generation. If you have a doctor that remotely comes close to talking about that, you hug them because you got a good doctor. The other new emerging one is sleep and our negative sleep patterns and how it affects disease generation. So this is kind of, if I had a hope of 2017, maybe we start talking about this with our mainstream health systems and hospitals, that this is the route that we're going to go. Real quickly, this is a food pyramid that I think is extraordinary, and it's much different than the Canadian Food Guide. The biggest thing that you see here is you don't see meat, you don't see beef, and you don't see dairy. But I think this is the future. And this is a Dr. Andrew Weil. You probably heard or seen him, the doctor with a big white beard. But if you look at the bottom, you talked about the vegetables and fruits, but then you see some anomalies like healthy herbs and spices like turmeric and cinnamon, very, very powerful food. But the consumer's changing thing. Health systems isn't going to change it. You're not going to get the leadership out of your Department of Health or your doctors or your unions, your labor unions. You're not, I guarantee you. But what will happen is the consumer will change. And there's a company that I spoke with called Life Kitchens. They're out of California. And they're designing basically these restaurant chains. They're appeasing to the consumers that want this. And inflammation is the root, I think, of all disease. When you trace it all back, your immune system becomes inflamed, which generates various types of cancers and diabetes and cardiovascular disease. That discussion doesn't go on today, and I hope it does in 2017. But what Life Kitchens did is these guys from McDonald's, former CEO and president of McDonald's Corporation, started this chain, and I think it's going to be the future. And it's quite a sustainable business model when you have to have these guys that make millions of dollars clogging your arteries, and now are turning around and going to start another chain to unclog your arteries. But that's what they're doing, and the consumer's responding. So just quickly, in the early 1900s, you know, when I look at public health, I look at what macro forces affected public health. Early in the 1900s, we had the advent of alcohol, and we kind of got to handle all that, although not, you know, controlled. And then we had tobacco and its adverse effect on public health. And now we're deep into the food issue, is probably the biggest generator of chronic disease that we're dealing with. We basically built our whole society to deliver really crappy food to you, and you don't even need to get out of your car. So that's where we're at today, and it's changing today, although I think we got to bottom out before we improve that. My 2 cents is that where the next emerging public health scare stress is going to be is from the internet. I think the e-world has its positives, as Allison showed on some big data. I think there's some really positive usage, but I think you're seeing a lot of emerging new mental illness directly related to the e-world, and it's very concerning. And I have 2 daughters, ages 13 and 15, and let me tell you, it's a big, big concern of mine. And I don't think we have any idea, I don't think our leaders in healthcare today have any idea of the emerging problem that this is going to present today and in the coming years. So I got tired of mainstream healthcare. I wanted to get out of it. I didn't feel like I was actually helping. I actually felt I was part of the problem. I've traveled to every golf resort, ski resort in the world with doctors and doing research. Well, we were researching all right. We just weren't researching the right things. We were researching what type of golf course and ski resort. So I wanted to get out of it and say, where can I affect health? So I started a company 4 years ago called Truleaf. And basically what it is we can design and build indoor farming systems anywhere in the world. We've talked to the Arctic, we've looked up north, in particular with the Aboriginal community, where disease rates are accelerating, and what does it look like to get fresh food up there, but we're also looking here locally to build our first farm. We've managed to attract really, really good people, people that could go work elsewhere for a lot more money and a lot less risk, and we have still an uphill climb. But we built a little facility at the Ag College, and we're just testing, and that product actually tastes as good as it looks. It's beautiful, beautiful product, full of nutrients, full of immune-boosting nutrients and anti-inflammation properties. And we want to get that to your schools and hospitals and your supermarkets 12 months a year. We've managed to attract good people, and our board chair is actually sitting over here to my right, is Robert Orr. And I don't need to tell you, he came as advertised to our organization. He's one of the smartest, brilliant business leaders I've ever met. What the bonus is he also, as you have appreciation now, is he raises the bar for you as an individual and as a person. And what I learned about Robert is, yes, he's very smart on business and strategy and execution, and he's tough. He holds you to a high standard. But what I also learned is his deep, deep commitment to community, whether it's his family or local community in the province. And for us, particularly myself, that's a very positive experience. My oldest daughter came to me the other day, about a month ago, and my wife showed her some media release on Truleaf, and it read something like, Truleaf hopes to raise millions of dollars. And she said to me, she said, Daddy, I know you're raising it, but when are you going to make it? and so I said to her, I sat her down, at any concerned parent would, sat her down at the table, looked her in the eye, and said, Jenna, have you been meeting with Robert Orr? But we're trying, and we're trying right here in Nova Scotia, and it's a lot of committed people that know it's a cool business model, but also it can do an awful lot of good in the community. And the brand that we're calling our lettuce and herbs that's going to hopefully be launched in 12 months' time is Goodleaf Community Farms. And we called it Goodleaf Community Farms because we heartfully believe that we're going to change the local community. I think this is the best quote I've ever read in healthcare, and it's genes load the gun, lifestyle pulls the trigger, environment pulls the trigger. We're all born with genetic makeup. Just because your dad had cancer or your mother had cancer doesn't mean you're going to get it. I think what we do in our lives dramatically affects those genes, and whether it's a negative lifestyle or a positive lifestyle, going back to that circle of longevity, it's all correlated. I hope to soon in 2017 that our current health system gets to understand that a little more and realizes that there's a bigger solution beyond pills and scalpels and MRIs and CAT scans, because we have to. So let me tell you quickly about a little project I did 3 years ago that I was asked. This is a group of kids at St. Stephen Elementary in the north end of Halifax. There's a national program called the Learning Advantage that asked me as a local business person to partner with a school and do a project on business. And it was a riot, let me tell you. And I volunteered one afternoon, about a week, for a second term. This is a grade 3 group. And what we did is I wanted to do it on food, but I didn't want to get into a situation where don't do that. Because kids will, as you know, will just, not dig your act if you do that. Mm-hmm. So we called it My Big Fat Greek Salad. And I think it was right around the time, and the kids did that. And so this is what you see is the parents and the kids. So we source local ingredients, and we try to figure out how to make a salad and sell it to the community. And we had pretty good success, but half the time it was just an etch-a-sketch. Every time I went in, we kind of tried something new. So I brought in the first day, which I read about, I brought in a Happy Meal, and the kids' eyes were lit up like toonies because I thought, oh, Mr. Curwin's awesome. He's bringing in some Happy Meals. So we set it aside for 3 months, and I said, kids, if it's good food, it goes bad. If it stays the same, it's bad food. Right? Anyway, my point is they got it. It didn't go bad. They understood that it didn't go bad and that it's bad food, and we had a great time. We talked about alternatives to eating, and one of the best, you can't really read this very well, but let me read it for you. So they gave me this nice gift at the end. Thank you for coming to our class. You taught me about fructose and sucralose. I like when you come in because sometimes we miss our math class. See you soon. Thanks, Mr. Curwin. But the bottom line is pretty cool. So the kids came up with, so I wanted to kind of tell them that, fructose is something that maybe just look for in your food, and we called it sometimes food on the weekend. It was just a real cool experience. So they came up with the term "Ose is gross," and they got it. And at the end of the year, I rented a bus, and we all headed up to a farm in the valley. And I learned a lot more from them than they got out of me, I guarantee you. And the farmer took us all over his chickens and everything, and they just soaked it up. And what I learned is that we bailed on them. Because if we show the kids today, what I learned about these kids is a lot of them are coming to school without eating breakfast. They didn't know how to prepare food at all. And the breakdown also happens at home. And there's a great opportunity here with our children. We just got to re-engage them on that part. So just some ideas real quickly. Here's if I had a, oops, pardon me. Let me go back. Here's what I would do if I had a wish in 2017. I would create a college for health coaches. I don't need a doctor. I need a health coach. My wife and I, our family, are relatively healthy. I would like someone perhaps a little more engaged and a little different thinking around that longevity wheel. The Nova Scotia Community College could play a very significant role in that, on training these young men and women. The deal today is if you want to get into healthcare, you're basically going to be an RN or an MD, and a lot of people don't have the marks, but most importantly, you don't have the money. But yet, they can't get into healthcare. So I would train health coaches from the Nova Scotia Community College, maybe a year at Dell, and do it now. I brought it forward to the community college. The CEO got it. Can't do it in healthcare because guess who's not going to like health coaches? Doctors and unions, because you're a direct threat to that. And so they'll fight it out. It's not a very harmonious environment. So health coaches. Second one, I would create an institute of disease reversal and avoidance. And I would do it completely segregated from current mainstream healthcare. I would have people like over there at that table that got up and spoke earlier. You don't need to be a doctor and a nurse. I would engage the Nova Scotia Community College. I would engage NASCAD, two institutions that why aren't we using these institutions to help us solve our problem? As we're not. These are different thinkers. These are creative thinkers. That's what we need. We don't need more of the same. And I think Robert had some very eloquent comments about that. So the Institute of Disease Reversal and Avoidance, I think, would be significant. I wouldn't have anything to do with the doctors. I wouldn't have anything to do with the unions. I would allow a group to think independently, think in a contrarian view, and help us solve our problems today. Food, math, science, English. I would devise our elementary school programs to introduce food education. And I'm talking about growing it, preparing it, eating it, and understanding it. We do it with math, science, and English, and we're doing it with relatively good success. I think it's time to talk about where that looks at food. There's in food production of the future, as I've experienced, and I think Robert has as well, that it's going to look a whole new different way. It's not going to be just fields and barns and tractors. Let's expose the children to new technology. I guarantee you they will really, really dig it, and the parents will really, really dig it. And I think it's a huge opportunity. The Truro, they're combining 2 elementary schools into 1. We've already talked to them. What would it look like if you designed food innovation into your classroom, and what's that outcome would look like? I think it's a big idea that I'd love to talk about, and we're talking to a group about helping us with that. Accountability, transparency, there's currently none in our healthcare system. Zero, zip, nada. Why? Why? And civic design. My daughters go to St. Agnes Junior High, and outside the front door there's a McDonald's, and right out the other door there's a food court from Halifax Shopping Center. So on any given day now, you might get the aroma coming from a Big Mac, or you might get the Cinnabon coming out of Halifax Shopping Center. And we're surprised that our kids are getting obese. We designed it that way. We designed it. It's our fault. We allowed it, and it's our fault. How are we going to change it? I think it takes a generation to build a problem. It's going to take a generation to solve it. But let's get at it. If you care and you want to act, you can change it. You guys can. Don't wait for your political leaders. Don't wait for anybody else. In closing, I'd like to share with you a little personal story. So the biggest community hero in my life was my mother. And so she was a lady in Dartmouth that had probably the biggest home health care business nobody ever knew about. She was a nurse. She's a very cool lady. And she looked after about 20 elderly people. She lived in Lake Bannock Woods. She looked after everybody in that place over in Dartmouth. And she had this large network of people, average age was about 85, where she went to visit them, took their blood pressure, helped them with their food, took them to the doctor, did everything for them, made them healthy bread, and most importantly, she used one of the best healthcare tactics you could possibly use. She listened to them. She would just listen to them. And they offered to pay her, and she would never take any money. And then when she passed away, all of these other people came forward that I didn't even know about that she looked after. And she was a nurse by training, and she was always a nurse. And so 3 years ago, I had Christmas dinner, and she said to me, I don't feel well, I'm just going to stay home tonight. And then a year later to the day, she passed away. So in between, when she became ill, I was dreadfully scared of what was in front of us because it looked like leukemia, and leukemia with an 81-year-old is never a good result. But I was also very, very fearful. I was just about to go deep into the system. And I knew exactly what I was going to expect, and I got what I expected. And so we went through a series of everything. And I tell you, I don't envy anybody to go through what we went through. And I know a lot of people and the system, but we went through it, and it was very, very disturbing. And so weekly visits to the clinic to get blood transfusions and hemoglobin. So one day we were at the hematologist, and Mom was getting hemoglobin about once a week. And so we're sitting in the clinic room with the computer waiting for the hematologist. And I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, but I said, Mom, you need hemoglobin every week. Let's see what plants perhaps it could help you with hemoglobin. So we Google it, and up comes wheatgrass. And so wheatgrass, if you looked at the molecular structure of wheatgrass and hemoglobin, it's almost virtually identical. It's also very rich in chlorophyll, which is great for the blood, and my mother had a blood disorder. And so I said, Mom, what do you think the doctor knows about wheatgrass? What do you want to bet? And so the hematologist comes in, and I said, excuse me, what's your thoughts on wheatgrass? Well, of course, I was leading the witness because they don't know anything about plants. And so we grew it. And that summer, we grew it. We grew it in bulges. And I would go over and cook for her every day. And then one day, I remember this day, we both were laughing quite hard. We're both standing there eating wheatgrass. And in our meals, and we both had this grass out of our mouths. I said, Mom, we look like two grazing cattle in a field here. But she felt better. And I like to think it was part of the wheatgrass, but I think it was more of what I call the wheatgrass bump. There was a bit of a placebo. And then she started to deteriorate. And then I learned, I saw what was coming. And we were told to go to emergency rooms, and we ended up in the hallways of emergency rooms overnight, and she didn't need an emergency room. One day I called her clinic, which I could almost see out her window. I said, could you come over? She's struggling breathing. Can you check her vitals? No, we can't come over. I said, why can't you? You're just really across the street. Could you come and just check on her? No. Health coach could, but not an MD. No more house calls there. And then she went into the VG, and she died in a room that I wouldn't want my dogs to die in. It's just a despicable place, and it's nobody's fault. But we're not patient-centric. If we were patient-centric, that room would be different. I would leave every night, and I would look at the beautiful brain repair life science building on Summer Street, glistening, beautiful office, wood. It's the beauty. And I'd always leave there going, you mean you have to die in that, and then we spend our money there? Our priorities are not right. So she left, when she died, she left me a handwritten note and went into her place the day after she died, and I had a little vanilla envelope, and I'd like you to leave this with you. It was a gift to me that I'll share with you in the spirit of this meeting today. And I looked at the note, and her writing was weak, and it said, value life, look after those who are alone. When your cup is full, give it away. You arrive with nothing and leave with nothing. Be kind to the kind and kind to the unkind. Stay humble, stay low. Say one prayer every day, and that is thank you. And take time to be with nature every day. And I lived a great life. So in closing, you all can play a role, you all can act, and you all can make a difference. Don't leave it for anybody else. And thank you for your time today.